Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It is Friday, June 13th. I forgot to turn on the lights. I had so much going on. I don't have the lights set to where I want them to be set, so bear with me as we get settled here. Big day for the Buckeyes. Just picked up a big commitment from a 2028 running back with Elijah Newman Hall. We will talk about that here shortly on the Big Me Kickoff. Again, I thought I had some of these things taken care of, but you know how the mind slips sometimes, and you know you're not ready to do the time warp if you know what if you know. But here we go, 11 o'clock. So we've been going here for a minute here. You can help me out by subscribing to the channel, hit that thumbs up, hit the bell. All that certainly helps us out with the process. Check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We are 2 weeks into Ohio State's 3-week camp season, and we have one camp left, and that will be Tuesday, I believe, with 7-on-7 events Monday and Wednesday coming up. So we're getting to the end of camp season. We got a couple weekends left for official visits. And of course, big recruiting news with the commitment of 2028 Elijah Hall. So we will get to that once we get a couple more people into the chat who want to talk about it, so we don't have to go over it over and over again. Had the opportunity to talk to Ross Bjork, Ohio State's athletic director, on Thursday. Tony and I did a Buckeye weekly podcast that went up this morning with some of our initial thoughts, but I wanted to do an additional show to give people an opportunity, because that was a taped show, and sometimes you don't get the questions fed directly to you like you do on a live show. So I wanted to give people an opportunity to talk about things. Again, this was a show that I didn't really promote all that much. It was kind of a last second decision. So if you're in the chat, be sure to say hello to us. Robert Howard has already said hello at this point. So hello to Robert Howard. He is a member of our YouTube channel. You too can support us for just 99 cents a month there. Just become a channel member. Does it, do you get keys to the executive washroom? No, but it's certainly just a nice way to be able to help us out here at the channel. Maybe pay for a little bit of bandwidth, what have you, a beer on the road. All of that comes out to be pretty sweet. My overall thoughts from talking to Ross Bjork on Thursday were, well, first of all, I already knew that he was a smooth customer when it came to salesmanship, and it seems that everything is going well. As Ohio State certainly has come off of this record-setting round of donations and gifting and everything else, and there was never a doubt in my mind that Ross was going to be able to pick up the torch that Gene Smith carried for years and years in terms of fundraising for Ohio State, being able to bring money to the program, because we're in a very different world. We're in a very different world now, where you used to really just kind of give your money to the university and hope that they knew what to do with it, whether or not it was facility upgrades or facility expansion, construction, what have you. It takes more than a couple dollars to run an athletic department that has 36 varsity level sports. But now you have the NIL funds. Now, whether or not that's the collectives of what we were used to, or whatever the hell it is we're in now, and I don't even know all the nomenclature and what have you for this, version 3.0. I mean, are we calling it 3.0? I mean, does it really matter what we call it? It is what it is. It's where we reside at this point. And if I'm some big booster donor type, and I, among all my causes or whatever, I have a set amount of dollars that I'm willing to outlay for causes that I believe in, whether or not it's charitable causes or athletics or whatever. I don't know necessarily that somebody, okay, I'm giving $50,000 a year. I snicker at that number. I wish I had $50,000 to give away, but I'm not the target audience. If I have $50,000 to give away, and really only 25,000 is going to athletics because I want to give to, like, St. Jude, or to whatever, Shriners, uh, you know save the Penguins, whatever cause. So I have 25,000, and now I'm having to decide, well, do I give it to the athletic department? Do I give it to the NIL, to the NIL machines? How do I handle this as I'm trying to find the best lighting for myself here? Again, I'm playing with some new toys with the lighting and everything else. Hey, from Facebook, I'm assuming that is OH rather than just you're having a show today. Oh, no, I think that's probably an OH. So I'll give you an IO right back if I'm correct, and if I'm incorrect, just let me know. Wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last time. So I don't think that you're necessarily going to manufacture a lot of new dollars. So there are a lot of mouths to be fed, and we found out from the AD that 4 sports will be the ones seeing the 18 million. Like, every school is got a pie of 20.5 million. And then like 2.5 million goes to scholarships, so 18 million. Now how you break that up is largely up to yourself, with certain guardrails, Title IX, a lot of other things that I don't know enough about to speak at an expert's level and say, well, I know this and I know that. So, I mean, it's about opportunity, and I think you have to make sure that you have, certain ratios in terms of numbers of male athletes and female athletes, and everything else. Ryan Dawes says 10 million to football. Of the 18 million, that might be low. That number may be low. That number really could be 13 million, I would think. But you got football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and women's volleyball. And Tony and I talked about it on his show last night, which aired this morning. Spoiler alert, we recorded last night. That you look at some of the other programs. Obviously, it had to be a women's sport to kind of balance out the Title IX numbers. Why not hockey? They've been to the championship game 3 years, winning the championship 1 year. Really controversial end this year, losing to Wisconsin. But a lot of those players are foreign nationals. And I know that just going across the border to Canada doesn't, we're not talking about people from New Zealand or anything like that, oceans and oceans away. We're talking about across, just a, lightly guarded border. They can't earn on their student visas. So maybe it didn't make sense for it to be hockey. Something that Ross Bjork did talk about a little bit, though, was that a hockey-only arena is coming. He talked about that St. John Arena corridor where you have French Fieldhouse and you have St. John Arena and you have the old ice rink and what's coming. And we went 75 minutes talking to Ross. I mean, and that was, that's a lot. We don't talk to Ryan for 75 minutes. We don't talk to anybody for 75 minutes. I think last time we talked to anybody that long was probably Gene Smith. And that may have been around the time of his retirement. But, you don't get those things. And we still didn't have enough time to ask every question. And in retrospect, I wish I would have had time to ask two, because I would have said, hey, you talked about the St. John corridor. While, I'm sure you're going to come out and make an announcement when you're ready to make a full announcement, can you give us a little bit of a sneak preview of what the plans are there? Because what Coach Muzz has done with the women's hockey team has been very amazing. I don't want to say amazing. I mean, Ohio State obviously is a big draw. It is a northern enough school that, it's not like completely foreign to bringing in Canadian players, but she's coaching the hell out of them. She's recruiting at a very high level, and, and her players are performing at a very, very high level. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's the big two and the little everybody else in women's hockey right now, with Wisconsin and Ohio State being at the top. And then, I don't want to sit there and say that nobody else has a chance, but nobody else really seems to have a chance when we're talking about Ohio State and Wisconsin women's hockey. But put that aside. Women's volleyball, a lot of opportunity there. I mean, the Big Ten is a tremendous, tremendous women's volleyball conference. Then when you add in USC and UCLA, it only gets more disgusting how good it is. And I mean, and I remember some really good years of Ohio State women's volleyball, and I haven't followed it closely in the last couple decades. I guess it's been a while. It's been a while. I have BTN. I should watch more. Volleyball was one of those sports I grew up loving. Being a West Coast person such as myself, I played a lot of volleyball. Played a little beach volleyball. No, nobody was going to mistake me for Karch Karai. So there's my name drop at that point. So you got your four sports that are going to make your money, that are going to get your money. There's going to be 4% increases annually. I think there's other ways for reevaluation of dollars, but this is a blanket number. Ohio State, just because it's so much bigger and has so much more of a giving arm and everything else, its guaranteed number is not going to be higher than Purdue's. It's not going to be higher than Mississippi State's. It's going to be the same across the board. Everybody is getting the same number. Now, how you handle your money, that's different. If you decide, hey, I want to put less of it into football and more of it into men's and women's basketball, then so be it. There might be some schools that sit there and say, we're going to spread this amongst more than four sports. That's fine too. You got to make sure your Title IX numbers work. Again, I'm not a Title IX attorney. I'm not going to pretend to be one and say that I fully understand how all of that works. But, you need to make sure that the opportunities are hit certain ratios that need to be there in order to be compliant. I think that there's a chance that Title IX has to be revisited in some ways. I don't have any strong opinions because I don't know enough about Title IX's inner workings to fairly give you a smart answer. But, I think that you're going to see Southern schools that are going to sit there, and baseball is going to be, and softball. I think those are two no-brainers down for SEC teams, some ACC teams, some Big 12 teams, to, where they're going to focus. You're not going to see money from Auburn probably going to volleyball. And I don't, I could be shocked, and Auburn could maybe have a pretty good volleyball team. I don't freaking know. But, you 18.5 or 18 million amongst friends goes away pretty quickly. So you have to be smart about how you're handling your money. And then, of course, there's the NIL clearinghouse of where you can get your deals cleared and everything else. So it's not like everybody's got like a salary cap of 18. You have a salary cap of 18 of university given monies, but you could still go and get a deal with, Germain Toyota. You could still go out and get a deal with Rally House. You could still go out and get a deal with McDonald's. It's got to clear certain litmus tests within NIL framework. I mean, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. I'm not accusing anybody out there of massaging NIL rules, and maybe things were not valued properly. It's like, oh yeah, for, sign these 5 autographs and you'll get $1 million. That doesn't necessarily, that's not the spirit of how NIL works. Now, and we'll get to a couple of your questions here in a minute, and we will talk about the 2028 commitment, Elijah Hall, as well as I'm looking to go about an hour. I'm actually having lunch with one of the members who spends time in our chat here, so they may or may not appear on this show because we're supposed to have lunch, I think, at 1:30. I don't even know what's going on anymore. 1:30. So a late enough lunch that if I want to have a beer on a Friday, I'm going to have a beer on a Friday. But I think we don't know what we don't know, and there were a lot of answers that Ross couldn't necessarily give because they were theoretical situations, but we don't have any real world implementation of this. So we're going to have to kind of see how some of this stuff works. Now, don't you think that there's probably going to be some awful renegotiating going on for some athletes out there that have been promised, pie in the sky deals? And I have a feeling that there will be some level of grandfathering in of deals, but I think that they would have to come under some level of scrutiny. But we talk about, especially internally, we call them Godfather offers, an offer you can't refuse. And you get toward the end of a recruitment, and you come in with your final best offer, and it's very substantial. And we've talked about deals of where people are a $6 million deal, $2 million per year for 3 years with some renegotiation arms and everything else. How if you're giving football, let's just say 10 million. Let's go back to the point that somebody else made and said 10 million. How do you give one guy? How do you give, especially somebody who's just coming into the program, $2 million? 20% of your nut right there, you're giving out to an unproven player at that point. So obviously there's going to be more to what NIL is than just the $18 million, at 20.5 that pairs its way down to 18. Now, I'm making sure I get these numbers right because Ross was very emphatic that we kind of understood the numbers, and he did a good job of explaining them. Again, I don't necessarily understand all of these new scholarships, and Ohio State will have 91 new scholarships and that's not just for football, that are funded out of this. He used baseball as an example, and whatever it used to be that you got like 11.7 scholarships to like divvy up however you wanted to, which was always something. I mean, and you ended up with some privileged kids that you would find other types of grant and aid for, and maybe some kids that didn't necessarily have some of the same built-in opportunities growing up who might need a quarter or a half or even a 3/4 athletic scholarship to get across the finish line. But let me jump into a couple of your questions and comments. Again, here at like 11:30, we will talk about Ohio State's 2028 commitment, Elijah Hall. I have some of his game footage here. We will watch it together. I only watched the first highlight as I was editing it down just to put it here in the system. Again, you're watching the Big B Kickoff. It is Friday, January 13th. Yes, it is Friday the 13th. What is your favorite horror movie? Why don't you tell me in the live chat if you're watching me live, and just in the chat if you're watching this on replay. What is your favorite horror movie? Friday the 13th is an acceptable answer, but it is also a very uncreative answer if you say that here on Friday the 13th. I thought we might be in for a scare. I did give the link to Tony, said jump on in, because we did joke about doing a live show today because we went 32 minutes, 36 minutes, something like that yesterday on a show that we're like, this is a good 20. This is a good 20, and we went a lot longer, and we had a lot of stuff left. Ryan Dawes says Cabin in the Woods. I have not seen that. I've not seen a horror movie in general in about 20 years. And that's because people around me did not like horror movies. I don't like seeing movies alone. And it's not a matter of whether it's a horror movie or an action movie or whatever. I just don't like seeing movies alone. I'm that jerk that talks in the movie theater, but I'm also not loud about it. I'm just like, oh my God, can you believe this? Or whatever I may say during a movie. So you've been warned. If I ever invite you to go to a movie with me, you're probably going to hear my running commentary throughout. But so Friday the 13th, be sure to subscribe to the channel here at YouTube. Don't cost nothing. I'll give you even a couple seconds if you're watching us on YouTube to hit that subscribe. We're trying to get to 30,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel before the Texas game. We've slowed down a little bit. I don't know what's up. Buckeye Nation is huge. We should be over 27,200 or whatever we're at right now. Help us get to 30K. So give you a couple seconds. Did you hit it yet? All right. Hit that thumbs up, hit the bell. All of that helps. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcasting platform, write us a 5-star review. It doesn't have to be super detailed. You could just be like, these guys rock with a 5-star, and that helps with their distribution. If you're watching us on Facebook, then thank you for watching us on Facebook. Have you considered checking us out on YouTube? That is the easiest way for the most interaction. I do see Facebook comments as they come through, and of course, I do know we're streaming as well to X, formerly known as Twitter. And that's about it. Sometimes we will go on to Twitch. I'm not sure what Twitch is. No, I'm not that old. I know what Twitch is, but I don't always do it. It can be a little spammy in terms of some of the messaging we get, so I don't do it for every show. But let's get through a couple of hellos. And again, here in 11 minutes, here on Headline News, we will talk about Elijah Hall. We have a super chat, front of the line. Let's just get right to that. Ryan Dawes, lunch donation. Thank you so much, Ryan. Really, really appreciate that. You too can help us out here at the site with super chats or super thanks, all of that. Ryan is also a great member over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. How about you? Now is the time Ohio State is going to go on a bit of a commitment run. Plain and simple. Ohio State will be going on a commitment run. We will be talking about one of them here in 10 minutes. But expect more coming in the following week or two. And I'll kind of leave it at that. But Tom, Tony, myself, Tom is finally off assignment, vacation. So he will be resuming his usual role on Buckeyes tomorrow morning. Tony, myself, all covering the team. Mark and Berm covering recruiting. Andrew Ellis doing a lot of everything. Ross Fulton, his team of experts, breaking down X's and O's. I know we're getting ready to start launching some more X and O's pieces to get you ready for the upcoming season. I've been working with Michael Pettit a little bit on maybe a piece coming here in the next week or two. All of that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And of course, that is the best way to support us because that is our site. And we're not sharing anything with a parent company of YouTube or whatever. And at the end of the day, people are going to ask you, how many subscribers does your site have versus how many subscribers does your YouTube channel have? And now, if we were Mr. Beast, it would be different. If we were Mr. Beast, I'd be flying around in a jet everywhere and all that good stuff. I'm a big fan of Mr. Beast. I don't think every single one of his pieces hit, but then again, neither do mine. So let's just get through here. There were just a lot of basic hellos and everything else. Doug Shepard Sr., thanks for doing this, Kevin. Absolutely. Enjoy doing shows. If you watch the first 60 seconds of this show, I was really kind of disjointed. I went on 45 seconds early only to not have my lights on or anything else. Bought a new camera a couple of weeks ago against my better judgment, trying to prove a point of better video quality certainly helps everything and helps us stand apart from everybody else. I do have a new microphone. I just didn't want to get around to setting it up as I'm doing this from my kitchen table and not from my office. Maybe this weekend I will find the motivation to clean my office and move the operation back up to where it needs to be. But until then, no. Ryan Dawes, number of players trumps all other considerations while keeping it even between genders. This is about Title IX and everything else. I mean, football with 105 potential scholarships or whether or not Ohio State's funding 85 or 90, there's certainly, you're dealing with a much larger count. Like men's and women's basketball even each other out. You're not dealing with the men's roster has like 8 more roster spots, scholarship spots than women's. That's not how it is. And you certainly don't have 105 women on a women's volleyball team. But, that's why I'm saying ratios and everything else. I don't know exactly all of the finer points to that. I've liked and shared this video. Everyone do the same. Yes, that certainly helps us out with our distribution. You guys have always been really good, very supportive of the show. I need to be more regular with doing the show. If I don't have anything to talk about, it's hard-pressed to get me to do a show. So I just need to sometimes say, you guys got my back. We'll just talk about what you guys want to talk about. And there you go. And maybe if I can find a good Buckeye business sponsor, Buckeye owned, Buckeye led, doesn't even have to be a Buckeye business, but I would prefer it to be the sponsor of this show. Then I would really have to do it because then I have contractual obligations to do the show 3 times a week, 5 times a week, whatever the hell it may be because of advertising deals. But if you're interested in advertising with either the Big Me Kickoff or any of our shows, reach out to me at kevin@buckeyegrove.com. Yes, that is my old site. That is my old email, but it still works. It is the best email to get in front of me, kevin@buckeyegrove.com. We've got sponsorship deals that can work with most companies, whether or not you're a startup and you're just looking for a little exposure amongst some key demographics, which we hit all of them here on our YouTube channel and at buckeyehuddle.com, or you're an established large company that just wants to connect more with Ohio State fans. We can work with you, all sorts of plans, from as simple as, maybe a sponsorship of just a segment or a stat, to presenting sponsorship rights for the site, for whatever, or not the site, but for the shows. We got a plan to work with you. So reach out to me again, kevin@buckeyegrove.com. I've already had one company, somebody who is a friend of a company, reach out to me. We're very early in our process of talking. Everybody's busy, but would love to have some more sponsorship opportunities here in play as we get closer to the season. I think if money was divided in a ratio that matches the revenue obtained, they would be fine, but I'm a known dumbass. Again, it's one of these things of, I don't want to get into a point of sounding like I'm pro Title IX, anti Title IX, whatever. I'll liken this to the WNBA argument. The NBA has been subsidizing the WNBA, and I'm not a big fan of the WNBA, of the game. I'm not even going to sit there and necessarily, target a player or 10 players or 20 players. It just doesn't interest me. It's not nearly as skilled as college women's basketball. It's all the things you hate about the NBA, the lack of defense and the flailing and everything else, thrown around with just a game you just don't like. That is the WNBA. So I will let me cross the WNBA off as a potential sponsor of this show, as I completely shit on their sport. But the point is when somebody comes out and says that they should be getting paid the same amount as the men, or maybe even, let's soften that, we need to be getting paid a lot more to be more in line with the men. And I'm like, but my friend, you're not making any money. You're making zero money. If the Indiana Fever aren't playing, it ain't doing anything. And let's be honest, while the Indiana Fever with Caitlin Clark is like a new high watermark, we're not exactly talking about a tsunami of economic impact. I mean, maybe compared to the little tiny small town that is WNBA economic impact, maybe it is a much larger tsunami, but let's be real, baby. It's not necessarily taking care of, it's not paying the bills. The numbers are still in the red. There's still a lot of issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, with that being said, you're never going to be able to have any sort of revenue type of deal for collegiate sports based on what certain sports bring in, because it's not going to be apples to apples. Women's basketball at Ohio State does pretty well, all things considered. Now, Ohio State does play in a giant mausoleum that is never going to sell out, and you're having to curtain off the upper tank and everything else. But there are a lot of programs out there that would like to have Ohio State's problems of only drawing 8,000 to a women's basketball game when they're drawing 800. But, again, you can't necessarily have a situation that's like, well, you need to clear X, Y, and Z. Now, again, women's hockey, very successful. I mean, women's volleyball has been circled. I mean, there are, women's soccer. I mean, but I have never really seen like this huge movement of people saying, hey, let's all, let's go out and go tailgate and go to the women's soccer game or whatever. I mean, that's, it's a shame. They deserve support. I'm the first one to say I'm in Pickerington. I'm not driving to campus generally to go and see, quote unquote, a non-rev sport, because I don't have time. I don't have money. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you got to find a way to make Title IX work to where you're not cutting off your nose to spite your face, but you're not taking away opportunity from women athletes. I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV. Let's get through a couple questions really quick because we're almost to the bottom of the hour. And I said I would talk about Elijah Hall at that point. Doug Shepard, I like watching women's volleyball and softball. It's awesome. The girls represent what college athletics are supposed to be. Was until very recently because of NIL. You got, Texas Tech paying $1 million to a softball pitcher. I mean, she's really freaking good. She is really freaking good. You're going to have to do that outside of your $18 million, though, if you're Texas Tech, I think. You can't really offload any of your monies into that university number without having a plan in place. So let's just keep going. Again, let's go through this. I was watching The Coach and The Couch Potato when this came on. Learned Favorite Key is 16 years old. His star rating doesn't reflect his potential. Unfortunately, star ratings are, and this will be a nice segue into talking about Hall. Everybody has their own criteria for what a star rating should be. And I don't think that the evaluators necessarily are always apples to apples. Are you rating it on where the kid stands right now against everybody else in his class? Are you rating it based more on how he stands against everybody in his class at his position? Is this a predictor of collegiate success? Is this a predictor of making it to the NFL success? I mean, you could have 6 different sets of criteria, and you could look at two players on the same team, on the same high school team, and judge it differently. I mean, and it's not necessarily like you're going in. It's like, well, I'm changing the litmus test. I'm changing what the litmus test is here, and it should be this or it should be that. I just think that sometimes you see a kid and it's like, well, he looks like a 3-star. He looks like a 4-star. I can't tell you. I don't know if I can really put a list of tangible reasons of why, this kid is a top 100 kid and this kid's a top 300 kid and not a top 100 kid. I mean, I don't want to put words in the mouths of the people who do the rankings. It is a difficult job. I'm friends with a lot of them. I probably have pissed off a few of them along the way by questioning their rankings. Try not to do that often. But Favorite Key is probably getting dinged because he's not playing through no fault of his own. He's not playing a full schedule against the Pick Norths and the Pick Centrals and the Dublin Kaufmans and whatever, being up in Delaware County. There certainly are some games that are, a little bit better that are non-league games, but he's not necessarily he's football hotbed adjacent. Delaware County is not turning out 50 Division 1A types of players a year or anything like that. So I think that there might be a little bit of that there. I think that a big season this year will fix a lot of that. But we're at the bottom of the hour. Once again, thank you everybody for joining us here on what is relatively an impromptu edition of the Big B Kickoff, Friday the 13th. Let me know in the chat what your favorite horror flick is. Friday the 13th is an acceptable answer, but it is not a very creative answer. So let me know. We've already had one person chime in with Cabin in the Woods. Let me scroll through and see if we have any more that are listed in here. I wanted to get to this one here really quick from Porchview Farm. As a woman, I cannot stand the WNBA. Again, it doesn't necessarily make it that you are anti-women's sports if you don't like the WNBA. The WNBA has a voice in the league, and that voice, in my opinion, has a sense of entitlement, and that turns me off. It turns me off. I'm not interested in supporting that type of league. Several years ago, do you remember the old ABL, the old women's league that was here? And I think it was the Columbus Quest, and I think the league was in existence for 3 years, and I think the Columbus team won the championship all 3 years. Never really heard that type of popping off in the ABL about demanding this and demanding that and everything else, and we're going to have a work stoppage. Well, don't threaten me with a good time. You promise? You promise you're going to have a work stoppage? But again, I want to see Taylor Theory and J.C. Sheldon and former Ohio State players have the opportunity to play basketball professionally in the United States. So, I mean, I'm not wishing the demise of the WNBA. I'm wishing a level of appreciation of, look, we're giving you a platform to put this together. Let's not let's let's have a little bit of a better game. Let's have a little bit of a better game, because it is, I mean, you're familiar with the stat me bounds, and Angel Reese is the queen of me bounds, and that's when you throw up a horrible shot and you get your own rebound. Wash, rinse, repeat. It's easy to be the rebounding leader when you are the me bounding leader. You're setting up your own rebounds, and it's not necessarily intentional of, oh, look at me, stuffing the stat book, but she's not a good shooter. She's not a good shooter. But I digress. Elijah Hall, 2028, running back, Tampa Blake High School. Recently at Ohio State's camp, Tony Gerdeman had a chance to talk to him. I believe it was Tony who talked to him post-camp. Really liked Ohio State. Really, really liked Ohio State. We had the internal conversation of, this is a kid that sounds like maybe he's going to commit to Ohio State. Nah, he's a 2028. They're recruiting the class of 2026. That's a couple of years out. Wake up this morning, Elijah Hall is committed. He had about a dozen offers, including offers from Florida State, Miami. I think he had Miami. Yeah, Miami, FSU. So he was known in state. Now, Ohio State and in-state Ohio kids is a little bit different, with Ohio State really it's like outside of, I guess, Cincinnati now being a P4 program, but I don't think that we really talk about Ohio State and Cincinnati recruiting against each other a ton. Maybe a little bit in the GCL, but even in the Catholic League, I think Notre Dame is a bigger threat than Cincinnati. Now, that's not to say that Ohio State has never lost a kid to Cincinnati. No, it happens occasionally, but it's not often that Ohio State loses, somebody that it really wants out of Cincinnati to Cincinnati. But the point being, Ohio State, if you're going to recruit an in-state kid, you better be damn ready to take his commitment, because if a kid from Lakota West says, all right, I'm in, you can't be like, whoa, slow your roll. We were just trying to make sure we had a seat at the table. I think there's a level of that in Florida that you better be ready to take the kid's commitment if you're going to offer him for real, but maybe with, Miami, Florida, Florida State, and, to a lesser extent, UCF, USF. They're trying. They're not, I don't want to sit there and be, oh my God, you're being a hater. I worked for years at Fox with a guy who played football at UCF. I can hear him right now. His name's Neil. Give me a hard time for trashing his program, which I used to do all the time. I'm like, no, I'm not trashing your program. I'm trashing your 80s mustache that you played with. That was never a good idea. So Neil, if you're watching, hey, he's not watching. But, back to Elijah Hall, really, really nice camp. I mean, the offers hadn't necessarily filled in. Outside of the Florida schools, what was the biggest offer? Wake Forest. Toledo. Did the Toledo offer come off of the heels of the Ohio State camp? And then, of course, there's Ohio State. And Coach Carlos Loughlin is not afraid to kind of set his own board. Is not afraid to set his own board for what he wants. And we saw when he came in year one, and Ohio State changed up its board a little bit. And I mean, I think that his board is even changing now. With whatever happened, things were trending very well with Carson Baker in the class of 2026. And then suddenly parties went their own ways. And that's fine. That's fine. Whether or not that was Ohio State saying we're going to go this way, or Carson Baker saying I'm going to go that way, or everybody saying we're going to go our own ways. I don't know if I have the whole story yet. It's not really important at this moment. I talk about the kids Ohio State gets more than I talk about the kids that Ohio State doesn't get. And as it stands now, Ohio State is getting Elijah Hall, 5'9", $175, maybe maybe a little taller than that. No, 5'11" here, 5'11". I'm looking at a couple of different recruiting databases. They don't do heights and weights as, quote unquote, a standardized process anymore. They do measure you at the Ohio State camp. That is not data that they send to the media, but they don't send us any data. So before anybody's like, that's illegal, they can't be doing that, don't worry. They don't give us any data. They've never made it easy. They've never made it easy. But let's pop on his footage and watch it together. As I said, I only saw it for a second, so I don't even know what's on this. I just wanted to cut it down to 2 minutes, but let's roll. There he is. He was patient there. Some nice acceleration there, and he kind of pulls away. We didn't even need to necessarily see any power there, or really like the patience. Kind of an upright runner at that point. Let's see here. All right, he waits. He gets his hole. Nice little cut there. Another nice little cut there. Nice key block there. Lets him turn the corner. And then once he turns the corner, you're not bringing him down at that point. He's not Jameer Brown in terms of being a 10-3, 600-meter guy from what I've seen so far, but he's plenty fast at this point. So here he is in traffic, and he just pulls away. And okay, you got 3 guys back here, and he's just going to sit there. Oh, I thought he would have been able to split there, but whatever. Here he is, in a wildcat situation. He gets it. You just can't bring him down at that point. People, you try to go low on him. That wasn't necessarily working. You got to just force him out of bounds. There he is on defense. He does play defense too. Tony was telling me that not only did he rush as a true freshman for like 700 yards, I think he had something like 15 sacks, which isn't bad. Now, I don't know a ton about Tampa Blake High School. I did look on a map, and it's right on the Hillsborough River. I mean, it's like right on the water, which means that I would have failed out immediately because I would have always been on the water. Maybe I was meant to be like a Jimmy Buffett pirate or something. I don't know. But there he is. He doesn't get caught up in the wash and was able to kick it outside. Again, we're talking about a class of 2028 kid. Don't watch this tape and say, well, that doesn't look like Savion Hyder. That doesn't look like Derek Cooper or whatever. No, this kid is a couple years younger. And was playing as a true freshman. So, I'm impressed with what I've seen there. Heron 78, hit that like button, guys. This dude has good content. I appreciate it. Thank you. Real recognizes real. Again, I enjoy doing this show. I need to be better. If I had a nickel for every time you said that, Noon, you'd have to send me a $30 super chat. Yeah, probably. I need to be better about doing the show on the regular. I think with the new camera, I'm very excited about the new camera. Not that anybody needs to see me in crystal clear 4K, but there you are. Let's just see what else we got here. We got Butch Jones. This is amazing. Not one Michigan troll to be seen. We're not talking about the Michigan issues right now, so they're not on here weekly trying to defend the actions of their scofflaw team or their scofflaw administrators or anybody like that. #bet. I guarantee you the second that we put Michigan in a headline, they will all be here. Nor do we have our usual Notre Dame troll. I can't even think of his name off the top of my head. I just can't deal with that. With Ohio State Notre Dame not scheduled to play this year, playoffs always can change the metrics. He is not hanging out here. Robert Howard says, not a fan of horror. It's all cheesy to me. And it can be. It can be. I mean, because there are thriller type of horror movies and there's slasher type of horror movies. A PG-13 horror movie is always going to be scarier than a rated R horror movie, in my opinion. And here's why. A rated R horror movie is a slasher, blood and guts, visual effects type of movie, whereas a PG-13 movie isn't trying to get across the finish line with that. It's trying to get across the finish line with trying to make you jump out of your skin, startling you, things like that. All of that is going to be more in the PG-13. So I've always come to find that your PG-ish types of scary movies, and you really need to get to that PG-13 sweet spot. I mean, let's just be honest. That's just kind of where you have to get to. to, I think, check all of the boxes. Ryan Dawes talking about King Bronco. I do not have my King Bronco decipher ring right now, so it is for the best that he's not on the show. I think he types with his elbows, so I don't know. Robert Howard, Buckeye Huddle has the best Ohio State coverage, unbiased, no clickbait content on YouTube. Maybe we do need a couple of clicks. Maybe if people won't subscribe to the channel on their own, maybe we need to come up with insane clip titles. Maybe we need to come up with the 5 biggest reasons of why you should hit subscribe or whatever. But that's just not really our MO. I mean, yeah, there are going to be people who like that kind of stuff. I subscribe to TMZ on YouTube, or not on YouTube, on Twitter. Why? I follow them because I like to see what's happening in the world of that type of news or whatever. But I'm also not hugely compelled to go out and seek out their information. I don't once a week go to TMZ.com or TMZ Sports to see what they have on their site. If something is in front of me, that's all well and good, because they can be a little clickbaity. There are certain sites that I do go to on my own that are part of my weekly rotation of sites that I think do things the right way. So hopefully you see us as doing things the right way. So I appreciate it. I'll get to Heron 78 in a second. Robert Howard, massive news. Absolutely. Everything's massive. It's massively massive. Oh, dare I triple dog dare you? Massively, massively massive. I mean, GTFO with that stuff. I'm a huge Michigan fan, but let's wait and see the outcome. It's not going to be what rivals want, and you have to examine Day's coaching last year amplified that. All right, I'll bite the cheese because this is not disrespectful. This isn't being a jerk. I mean, I think that this is phrased fine. So I think Michigan fans have been sold a bill of goods that is flawed. Sharon Moore getting a 2-game suspension, weeks 3 and week 4 of the season, and a really large fine are not going to cover any of this. Are not going to cover any of this at all. Now, there certainly are Ohio State fans saying that the team up north should get the death penalty. That's not happening either. So, from next to no punishment to all of the punishment, where on that scale does this fit? Now, there are people out there that are saying, oh, leaks are telling me this and leaks are telling me that. There is only one part of this equation that could be leaking anything, and that is the University of Michigan. The NC2A is not going to leak this. Nobody on the Council on Infractions is going to leak this. Well, I got a friend whose brother's cousin is bullshit. That's not, no. Stop. No. It's not getting leaked. Especially when we're talking about an organization that had North Carolina dead to rights. Dead to rights with its academic fraud case and screwed it up. Had Miami dead to rights with Nevin Shapiro and overreached and got everything thrown out. Do you think the NC2A is stupid enough right now to put stuff out there to leak it? What is there to gain? The NC2A is the judge, jury, and executioner at this point. It doesn't have to curry public opinion. It doesn't have to get people on board with, we're going to hammer them. We better get people on board. The vast majority of people are rooting against Michigan. The vast majority of people watch NASCAR races for crashes, not for excellent passing, not for side drafting. They want to see wrecks. People want to see Michigan wreck. People want to see Michigan put into a wall. People want to see Ohio State wreck. People want to see Ohio State get put into a wall. That's just how it is. And I'm not saying it's an Ohio State or a Michigan or a Big Ten issue. You always want to see the favorite, whether it be the media darling or the team that's winning all the time or whatever. People want to generally see that team, entity, whatever, run into a wall. maybe nobody getting really, severely hurt. But, if we have to bring out the red flag and stop the race and clean up the track and everything else, that ain't half bad. So, where does all of that necessarily fit into here? I don't think it's going to be, if we're saying on this side is 2-game suspension and a $5 million fine, and then on this side is like, we're going to take you out to, the center of town, and we're going to sit there and throw car batteries at you. I think it's going to be severe. I really think it's going to be severe because, and I'll get to Robert Howard's comment, and I'll get to Heron 78's comment here in a second. If you do not severely punish for a scheme of this size and scope, and by punishing, I'm saying that you're punishing because you have found them guilty. There's not an Ohio State fan out there alive that has not found Michigan guilty. And there's probably not many Michigan fans out there that have found themselves guilty. I've seen a couple. I've certainly seen a couple of Michigan fans that are like, yeah, we're pretty much toast. I don't know if they're paying you lip service or if they truly believe it. And it doesn't really matter. Everybody's going to have their own opinion. My earbuds are trying to fall out. It is what it is. But with that being said, what happened last year in Columbus between Ohio State and Michigan was unacceptable. No, not the fight. That was unacceptable too. How Ohio State went about playing its game, trying to beat Michigan in a game in a phone booth when Ohio State should have been playing this game in the dog park. Endless turf to run on, and Ohio State decides that it wants to do it in a 2x2 box. That's stupid. But Kevin, Ohio State won the national championship. Both things could be true. It could be true that Ohio State went on a remarkable, hard to put into words, 4-game run to win the national championship, and also suffered from the darkest, deepest, thickest brain fog in the world in that game plan against Michigan. But Kevin, Will Howard got his bell rung. He sure did. But Ohio State never necessarily needed to put itself in a position of where that was going to be the determining factor. You have Jeremiah Smith, you have Emeka Egbuka, you have Carnell Tate, you've got all of these things. You can get the ball to the outside to Quinshon Judkins, Trevion Henderson. You got the tight ends that you have. There's no reason to try and win a street fight in a phone booth. So Michigan did. I mean, you can talk about the other couple of games, and did Michigan know Ohio State signals? Yes. Did Michigan, garner, unfair advantages through using electronic methods to steal signals in advance and have laminated things? I believe so. But Ohio State screwed itself as well by not playing its game. I'm going to show you, I'm not just going to beat you, I'm going to beat you at your own game. This is not, there's not a column wins, losses, wins for beating you at your own game. That does not exist. That is a non sequitur. That's no, don't do that. And when Ohio State goes to Ann Arbor in 180 days, whatever, sorry, this isn't Buckeyes tomorrow morning. I don't keep counts of any of that stuff. Ohio State better go out there and spread the MFR out if it wants to win. Now, there's going to be a different Michigan team than the one the year before, and the year before that, and the one before that. So Michigan can be as guilty as sin, and Ohio State could have been stupid as hell in that game plan. Both of those can be true. But I'll tell you what does not impact the other. Ohio State's stupidity in game plan in that game has nothing to do with what Michigan is going to face coming out of the NC2A punishment. And I'm sorry to people who are buying into what other experts up there are saying and saying, well, it's certainly not going to come down to this and certainly not come down to that. I hate painting myself into a corner because you don't have anywhere to go when you do that. It really feels like some people up there painted themselves into a corner, and it's like, well, there's not, wins aren't going to be vacated, and so on and so forth, and there's no way that there's going to be a postseason ban. Sure about that? You sure about that? Now, people are also misconstruing what NC2A President Charlie Baker said about Michigan's status as the national champion. First of all, it's not Charlie Baker's decision to award a national championship. The NC2A has nothing to do with awarding of the Division I FBS national champion. FCS it does. FBS, nothing. So people are running. I mean, you could sit there and talk to, your favorite dude up there from a Coney shop, and his word means just as little as Charlie Baker's word means. He has no impact on this. The NC2A may be the ones that could sit there and say, well, you're going to have to declare these 30 games, these 23 games, whatever, no contests because of how things were done. You're going to lose the wins. You're not going to be at 1,000 wins anymore. Ohio State might get to 1,000 wins before Michigan. Wouldn't that be something? So on and so forth. And then it will come up to the CFP to make a decision. It's the CFP's decision about that national championship. It is the CFP's decision whether or not that title will be vacated. It has nothing to do with Charlie Baker. It has nothing to do with the Council of Infractions. It has nothing to do with Tony Batiti in the Big Ten office. It certainly has nothing to do with the Ohio State Athletic Department. It is a CFP issue. The CFP is going to have to do that. Now, if the CFP sees that Michigan's record that year is 0-0 or 0-1 or whatever, based on having to forfeit, no contest, whatever flavor you want to call these games, the CFP is going to have to make a decision. And I'm sure the CFP also is aware that we're in a day of where shenanigans is called upon an organization immediately. No, vote of no confidence. I'm not bullish on the title being stripped. I don't think it's going to get stripped. I do think we're going to see a huge fine. I think we're going to see all of the wins in question taken off the board. I think we're going to see another suspension of consequence, a long one, for Sharon Moore. We're going to see recruiting violations. I think we're going to see scholarship reductions. But I don't know how scholarship reductions necessarily work in this day of 105. You could sit there and say, okay, we're going to, essentially take away 10 a year for 3 years or whatever. That doesn't mean anything. Scholarship reductions are by far the most toothless thing under this new House settlement and everything else. But I think we could see a postseason ban and everything else. I'm going to go out of order. My point is, we all saw it with eyes, no signs helping with getting whooped in trench, blah, 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 blah. Michigan won the games. Ohio State only has an excuse of temporary insanity. We all saw it. Now, there certainly were times, and this is documented, Ohio State lined up in a formation and ran a play that it had not run all season. They had not shown any of this. And Michigan sniffed it out for a loss. There is not a effing chance in the world that Michigan scouting was so good that it knew something that Ohio State didn't even know about itself on that play. Ohio State certainly was a huge enabler in its defeats. Don't cheat. Don't cheat. Then this isn't an issue. Or cheat the old-fashioned way. Cheat like Brent Venables did, where he was a notorious sign stealer during the game. I don't think anybody had laminated things from Kinko's with what everything is. Didn't have 10 slapdick walk-ons jumping up and down. It's like, none of that was, none of that was there. And Brent Venables got exposed once teams really kind of made an effort to change up how it was getting plays in, running with the curtains and things like that. So just because, well, they did A and B, but they also did C, D, E, and F, and C, D, E, and F were all bullshit illegal. You can't just sit there and it's like, well, how about we give them a 30% win because they did 30% of the work. No, the light is on or the light is off. It's not on a dimmer switch. It's about to be lights out for Michigan. It's about to be lights out for Michigan. It may be 30 days. It may be 90 days. Michigan will threaten to sue everybody. But then again, Michigan was going to sue the Big Ten. How dare you suspend Jim Harbaugh for half a day a week, but let him be around the team for 6.5 days of the week, and you do that. Michigan doesn't want any of this stuff going into discovery. Not an attorney, nor do I want to be one. I mean, maybe I'd like to bill a couple $100 an hour, but nobody could afford those super chats. Michigan doesn't want this thing to be. Michigan wants to try this in the court of public opinions, but doesn't want to put anything on the record in the court of public opinions. You can't do that. You're either transparent or you're not. You can't be conveniently transparent, and what's behind the transparency is just a giant middle finger. You can't do that. I mean, you can. That's why nobody likes you. That's why everybody thinks you're scummy. I mean, but you can't do that. Let me go through a couple of these things here. Robert Howard, and I'm already past an hour at an hour, so we'll kind of start to decelerate here. Heron is only being respectful after being in OSU chats all morning and realizing that he was not getting as much response by being a male piece of anatomy. He hasn't been a jerk to me, so that's fine. That's fine. Again, we're toward the end of the show. You would really have to try and pull a fast one to get yourself run at this point. Heron 78 speaks proper English. There's no way that Heron 78 is King Bronco. There's not a chance in hell. Now, does Heron 78 have another name on here that he's used? I thought that he was somebody else who actually was one of the more rational Michigan fans. Now that just means that you're only like sort of pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. But one of the more rational Michigan fans out there. But I don't know. I can't keep track of that. I can't keep track of all of that. Steve says, I left at the beginning of the show to do chores. Chores done. Show still running. Yeah, I'm winding down at this point. Sorry that you missed. You can, of course, catch us on replay. Unless you did chores to avoid watching the show. Also a smart choice, I guess. But then again, why would you admit that? Why would you out yourself if that were the case? Heron says, I can respect that, but still disagree on stuff. And that's the first I've heard about that play. I think it's going to be minor and not what rival want, but I do respect you guys. Keep up the good content. I don't have time right now to look up the play. I mean, I talked to a player. It's on the record. He's given the quotes of, they did something and Michigan was able to jump it and they'd never run the play. You have a team full of football analysts and everything else, and it's their job to break down every piece of footage and everything else. There was no evidence of this. It was pretty obvious. I mean, yes, sometimes you just guess right. Sometimes you just guess right and you put yourself in a situation and you could get something thrown at you and you look like you have it scouted out because you had a linebacker in the A gap and that's what you needed to have, or you needed to do this or something like that. Your safety didn't get caught peeking in the backfield or whatever. But I just say to you, Heron 78, there are a lot of people on the team up north side, analysts, experts, what have you, that have been saying this is going to be nothing, bet, Ohio State, PI brother, Rico, blah, 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 projection that Ohio State is crying about things that it's actually doing. Not a single one of those things have been true. Not a single one of those things have been true. But if you want to keep biting the cheese from the people who are lying to you or being or misleading you or being misled and in turn misleading you or whatever you want to say, it's a free country. Have at it. Just don't burn anything down while you're at it. But it's a free country. You can keep on believing them. Eventually they got to be right about something, right? Flip a coin 50 times. Eventually it's going to be tails at some point. I hear it never fails. But the track record is low, is very low. Now, again, I'm not ready. When I'm ready to give a show where I'm going to go and these are my predictions for the NC2A penalties, then I'll live or die with what I say at that point. Noon, you said this was going to happen. No, it didn't. I'm sorry. But I've not gone on the record, but I'm going on the record saying it's not going to be this horseshit 2-game suspension and a $5 million fine. It's not. If it is, and you're not cheating tomorrow, if that's the penalty, if that's the penalty today, and you're not cheating your balls off tomorrow, then you're a loser. Because there's no penalty for cheating. If that is all that we come up with, 2-game suspension, pick your games, choose your own adventure book. You get to pick the games you want to be suspended for, and like a $5 million fine, you better start cheating. Because who's going to stop you? And while you're at it, be a horse's ass the whole way through the process. And don't cooperate with the NC2A. And don't do whatever and have ridiculous hashtag things and everything else and play the victim and all of that. There is a 0% chance that if this stuff is true, which I believe it to be true, that you can let that type of blatant disregard of the rules, shystiness, whatever you want to say, you cannot let that go unpunished. Because if you let it go unpunished, you're just welcoming everybody else to do it. And if you let it go unpunished and you let somebody who utilized it keep a championship and everything else, then you're just stupid not for doing it yourself. And then at that point, we may as well have anarchy. And then at that point, for those of you who have watched South Park, we may as well be talking about sarcassaball. Because there's just the sport is dead at that point. But let me jump right here. I follow both, and you're right. That's what Michigan is saying, not days, bro. We all know that's false. Do we? RICO? Racketeering? Saw plenty of that from people that had mod and staff after their name. So if you want to keep believing that, that's on you. That's on you. I don't think I've ever changed anybody's mind on this show. And that's fine. I'm here to provide a platform to talk about Ohio State sports and whatever else Ohio State fans may want to talk about. The end goal is for fans then to sign up for Buckeye Huddle, which is how I really make a living and put food on the table, knocking on wood and everything else. Do like to eat from time to time. So I don't have any reason to feed people a line of BS. This isn't Ohio State on trial here. During TAT 5, I was pretty real. For that whole process. I did not put out, a bunch of smokescreen and subterfuge. The only thing I put out there that wasn't necessarily factual based is, boy, this is a stupid rule that they're getting nailed on. And boy, they should probably, change how they're handling their approach to this crisis. At no point did I say it didn't exist. These are not the tattoos you're looking for. These are not the gold pants that you're missing. I was not a denier at any point, but there is a crap ton of denial. There is a crap ton of misdirection, but I have no reason to say massive massive, and come up with just dipshit titles and everything else. The truth will set me free. The truth will prove me right, and I fully believe it. I fully believe at the end of the day, I'm going to be proven correct. And for the people who watch this show, I'll get people be like, "Hey, that's pretty cool." I think Heron 78 is stand up enough to be like, "Hey, man, you were right. Sorry." I think they're going to be people who I'll never see again, at least under what name I've seen them under. Oh, I'm just losing some lighting there. I don't know what the hell happened there. Again, dealing with a new camera. Let me get back in here. Let me image. Let's turn off the HDR. There we go. Let's turn back on the HDR. Maybe. There we go. All right. I don't know what the hell happened with my lighting, but we're getting done. I want to go through Heron's last reply. 4 games probation, fines, nothing gets vacated or postseason ban. And Michigan Stallions have cooperated with the NCAA. Connor Stallion showing up doesn't mean anything. He was probably there just to be a little arrogant prick. Maybe they needed a vacuum to be serviced. We don't know what he did. We don't know what he did while he was there. Start cheating. If this is what it is, start cheating yesterday. It is a lawless organization. Do whatever you want. Take all the steroids you want. Build a cyborg football player. Have exploding footballs. Nothing matters. There's no sanctity to the game left. If this is all it is, fuck the rules. Go with whatever it is you want because there's no sanctity left to anything. That's what I'm hearing. That's what it is. 4 games, probation, and fines. You know what? And you could sit there and you could fine Mark Cuban $250,000 for cussing out the refs. And I know he's not the Mavs principal owner anymore. $250,000 to Mark Cuban doesn't mean anything. Telling Mark Cuban that he can't watch the game courtside for 2 games because they're very, very mad at him doesn't mean anything. Punishment is supposed to dissuade people from following similar actions and to have a punitive effect on the party or parties that were involved in the first place. This is a joke. This is a joke punishment. Now, did the NC2A go into some places where maybe it didn't have the right to with the Joe Paterno Penn State situation? Absolutely. And a lot of that stuff eventually got knocked down. But if this is the penalty and you're not cheating yesterday, then you're an idiot. Because none of this is going to dissuade anybody from doing anything. We're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars in play. You know, we're talking about Ohio State football having an $800 million economic impact on Columbus and the university and the area around it and everything else. 4-game suspension, probation, fines. Oh, for Christ's sake. Why don't you make them go to traffic school too while you're at it? Why don't you make them go to traffic school, online traffic school, where somebody can just do it for them? I mean, that is so no teeth. Punishments have to mean something, or you're just going to go out and do it again. You're just going to go out and do it again. So no. I'm going longer on the show than I meant to, but I apologize. CT, laughing my bleep off. Whoa, Heron is triggered. Michigan and Stallions have not cooperated with the NC2A. Hence why you had the hearing. Ha 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 ha. If you cooperated, you would have settled. Where is the sweet spot? Ohio State over cooperates. What the hell they're doing in Ohio State compliance? And then one time we sat there and we had a picture of a stack of money out, and we know that that's like a level 7 violation. So we're going to self-report, and then Ohio State self-reports 75 things and looks like, it doesn't give a shit about the rules. And then on the other side, you've got programs like Michigan who have not cooperated one iota, one bit whatsoever in this process. The cover-up was worse than the crime in the TAT 5. The cover-up is what ultimately unraveled the Jim Tressel legacy more than everything else. You know what's worse than a cover-up? Just flat out not cooperating. The NC2A doesn't like that. They're just not going to wear down at some point. It's like, horse feathers. You're fine. We're just tired of dealing with all this. We're just tired of dealing with all this. So if the NC2A would have had more contrition from Michigan along the way, we wouldn't be here June 13th, 2025, still talking about the waiting on the axe to drop. Michigan would be well on its way to whatever penalties would be in place, and they would be dealing with with the ramifications, and they would be that much closer to potentially coming out the other side of the tunnel and hoping it was not a train. But Michigan has been anything but cooperative or anything. We'll just keep going. And a basketball school that recently got a season vacated for a recruiting violation. What do you think is going to happen to the largest cheating scandal in college football history? Yikes. Again, it's well within the NC2A's, purview to vacate games, forfeit games, whatever. We all saw it with our own eyes. I was at the 2010 Sugar Bowl against Arkansas. That game was taken off the record because of Tat 5. Well, I was there. We all saw Ohio State win the game. Ohio State make it a lot closer than it need to be. Blocked punt at the end of the game. Everything else that that happened there in that game. The zone blitz and everything else working out for Ohio State. But the NCAA took that away. So, did you self-impose, or was that the NC2A? I mean, I guess, what are we talking about? The Tat 5 or whatever? Well, the NC2A did eventually rule, and there were 5-game suspensions and everything else. And then Tressel said, well, I'll take a suspension in line with my players and everything else that was there. And then, for whatever reason, the NFL decides to get involved and decides that it wants to match the penalties, wants these penalties to go full dynasty league and follow Tressel to the Colts in his advisory role and to follow players and everything else. And then you got Jim Harbaugh being weird in Los Angeles about nervous birds and milk and nothing there. And, he escaped the situation. Now, I understand 2013, 2011, that's a million years ago from 2025 and where we stand, and we have different tolerances and things are viewed differently. But no. Doug Shepard says, quit giving the program oxygen. I hear you. Last one, barring a super chat. Thanks for sticking with me. A little bit of overtime. I've got to get out to Graceland area here in Columbus for a 1:30 lunch, so I don't have a ton of time on the back end. So Ohio thinks it's going to be serious. We'll stop there. The state of Ohio University. I'm not going to play Jim Harbaugh's stupid little game of calling it Ohio. I know that Michigan fans view the same thing. Team up north, that's so stupid. All right, whatever. But I don't have to buy into calling it Ohio, something, that's completely, incorrect. I mean, it's not like people are calling University of Michigan Central Michigan or something like that. Central Michigan's neighbor, making up just absurd names or anything like that. Does the university believe it's going to be serious? I don't know. I have not talked to anybody on the record at Ohio State about it. There have been no conversations on the record. Michigan thinks nothing. Well, part of that is true. I don't think Michigan thinks. Michigan has really thought a lot of things and has thought its pair of twos were going to win. When the board came out, ace, 10. And there's somebody sitting with an ace or a 10 out there who is just, continuation betting you to death. If Michigan thinks it's nothing, then maybe a Michigan degree isn't worth what we thought it was. Santa Ono tried to run away to Gainesville, got named and then denied. The Rats have jumped off the ship. Michigan can say it's nothing. What does Michigan How does Michigan fight the case and then say, but it's really nothing? I mean, if they believe it's going to be something and they say, well, we think it's really going to be something, we sure hope it's not a lot, that would be a complete change of tone from a bullheaded bully type of a stance that it's taken about how dare you persecute us? How dare you persecute us? Get out of here. Get out of here. What the hell are you talking about? They've got the dead hooker and the gun and the smoking gun in the trunk of the car. So I don't understand. I don't understand. In National, they think it's overblown. No, you see, Dan Wetzel thinks it's overblown. You see two or three voices, and I don't want to name anybody else because I don't know where everybody stands on the issue, and I don't want to get a text message from somebody. It's like, I heard you mention my name on a show, and you said that I thought this when it was that. Don't for a second. That's more bullshit that you're being fed by Michigan side of things, that everybody else thinks this is nothing. Everybody wanted to see Ohio State swing from the gallows over the Tat 5. And spoiler alert, everybody wants to see Michigan swing from the gallows on this one. Again, there is no reason whatsoever not to cheat if they get away with this. Period. The NC2A should just fold up shop, lock the doors, and then throw the keys in the river if it does not follow through with something here, because there is absolutely no reason outside of the eligibility center for, incoming players to pass the clearinghouse and everything else. There's no other reason for the NC2A to exist if it F's this up. Plain and simple. Lunchtime, noon. You're right. It is lunchtime. I'm done. We will come back next week. We've got 7-on-7s on Monday and Wednesday, a camp on Tuesday. I will find time to do a show. It may be more of an evening show just to make it work. Be sure, once again, to subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up, hit the bell. The bell works 50% of the time to let you know when we're going to do a show. But the best way to know when we're going to do a show is be a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. I do try to post shows a day in advance of when I'm going to do them. Join us there. Tom, Tony, myself covering the team. Mark and Berm covering recruiting. Andrew Ellis doing a lot of everything. Ross and his team of experts doing so much with the X's and O's. All of that there. And the Huddle Board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse Columbus, the best Ohio State message board there. Hell, Heron 78. We would even welcome you there to an extent, as long as you played nicely with everybody. More or less, you've been nice here, so you're okay in my book for now. Are you sure you're not Ferris? I could have sworn that you were Ferris as well. I don't remember Ferris being one of the Michigan fans that I think that was rooted in a sense of reality. Still was probably dropped on his head at some point to become a Michigan fan, but still was not completely over the river of denial. But until next time, have a great day. Have a great weekend. Stay hydrated, especially if you're going to be out there mowing your lawn this weekend. It gets warm out there. And I will talk to you very soon.